different all of the panelists and keynote speaker bios, useful links, our social media. So at some point we'll share with you our group meet. And then of course, recordings from all of our previous webinars, etc. So we invite you to visit our website. Thank you all. And without further ado, I wanted to introduce the Director and Assistant Dean for Academic Partnerships, Alfred Herrera. Is Alfred here today? Do I see him?
You may not see me, but I am here.
Welcome. Good morning, Alfred.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. Buenos dias. We are very, very excited to be here with you today to share space, to share love, to share passion and commitment. As Claudia said, my name is Alfred Herrera. I've been at UCLA for over 40 years now and have been committed to mostly two areas, transfer students and undocumented students. And in general, all about social justice and equity. So it is so exciting to be able to be here today. We cannot wait till we get back and are able to do this in person, to see all of you and your beautiful faces in front of us. So I am from Baldwin Park. Anyone from Baldwin Park out there? I am first generation low income student. My father worked as a laborer. My mother cleaned houses, and I grew up with five. Excuse me. There's six of us. I was the fifth of six, the first to go to college, and have had great role models. And it's just about getting information, getting the resources available and using them. One of the things that I wanted to do is to thank the planning committee. As Perla said, this is the last of 16 or 17 different webinars that we've had over the last month and a half or so. And this, so we want to really thank Claudia, Perla, and all of the other committee members who really helped pull this together. As you will find out throughout the day, you have an amazing day of great speakers and information. But we also want to hear from you. We want to make sure that you ask a lot of questions. You came here because you wanted to get certain things, to find out certain things, to learn things, to share things. So part of that is to make sure that you ask the questions that you came here to get answers to. And being part of our program, CCCP, allows you the opportunity to continue to engage with us and our peer advisors to learn more, for us to help you with the application and all kinds of things over the course of the next year. So get involved and get and ask your questions. UCLA is in an interesting place right now. Transfer students have always been very important to UCLA. And we have been the campus that has taken the most transfer students for probably since inception. And, and that means that we are committed to ensuring that our transfer students are well represented. And that's the work that we do, is really helping prepare you for that. One of the things that is important is, as we move along the transfer route, one of the other things that's happening right now at UCLA is that we are in the process of becoming an HSI institution, Hispanic serving institution. And what that means is that if you have 25% of your population that are Latino, then you are eligible to be designated as an HSI, which allows you to get a number of different grants and resources for funds to develop even more programming. So it's not about just getting the numbers, it's about what are we doing to serve the students to ensure that they are successful. And that begins here, because our goal in CCP is not just to get you admitted, but to prepare you to graduate. And so we are excited because transfer is one of the important pieces of that HSI initiative. We were just looking at data, and for the last 15 years or 10 years, transfer students continue to grow and do better in terms of numbers than freshman students. So we've always known transfer is the answer. And so we're really excited to have you be a part of it and to do that. And the other thing is stand up, take action, do what you need to do to really get involved, because we're in a crazy place. We just came off of a regime that was not friendly to us. And that doesn't mean everything's changed. What it does mean is that we're in a little better position right now, but we still need to act. We still need to stand up. We still need to stand up for DACA. We still need to stand up for undocumented students, first generation students, and anybody else that is part of that social justice framework. It is really important to hear your voice. Doesn't mean you have to carry a banner and be demonstrating. It means that you have to do whatever it is that you do and feel comfortable with doing. But don't just sit by and let things happen. Do something about it. Make sure that you get involved in your community college, meet with your president, meet with your faculty, make sure that your voices are heard and that you get the services that you need to really help prepare you. So again, I want to just welcome you for being here, taking this Saturday morning. It's really going to be an exciting day, and I look forward to interacting with you throughout the day as well as in the year to come. Have a great day. Thank you.
Okay, everyone. So up next, we're going to be meeting the wonderful Power to the CHICANX LATINX Transfer Student Experience Committee. Oh, let me turn my camera on. Sorry, I thought it was on. Okay, hi. So we've been working on this for quite a while now, and we're very excited that today's here. And up first, we have
Me.
Yes. Okay.
Good morning. Good morning, everyone. As I mentioned earlier, well, I don't even know if I mentioned it. My name is Claudia Salazar. I'm CCCP's administrative coordinator. I've been with the center for the last 10 years, working with the team, the full-time staff and student staff team, to manage the day-to-day operations of the center. I am a first-generation college student, daughter of immigrants from Mexico, from Jiquilpan, Michoacan. I'm the second of 7 children, and I'm first in my family to graduate from college to obtain a master's degree. So I have a bachelor's degree in Chicano Studies, a master's degree in Chicano Studies, and a doctorate degree in educational leadership. And let's see, just happy to be here to be able to work with this exciting, amazing team members that help pull together a great agenda for you all. And as I mentioned earlier, it's exciting to be able to plan the second annual, or the second webinar for the CHICANX LATINX community. Last year was the first one that was held. It was a huge success. And so thank you to Santi, who had the vision to pull this webinar, to help create this webinar, and for Alfred, of course, to helping, and giving us the space to pull this webinar together. And so here we are, year 2, again, doing it better. We have an exciting agenda for you all. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce our other full-time staff member on the planning committee, Perla.
Thank you so much, Claudia. Hi, everyone. Good morning. My name is Perla Partida. I'm one of the coordinators overseeing our LACC and LA Harbor partnership. So go Seahawks and Cubs. If you're in the building, show some love. I, too, am a daughter of immigrants. My parents are from Jalisco and Tamaulipas. So whoop, whoop. And I was born in Montebello, but raised in Baldwin Park. So I'm super proud of that. I am as well a first generation college student. I'm also a parenting student, a non-traditional student. So I fit many categories. So if you're one of those categories, I'm so happy that you're here. I identify as Chicana, a mujer, and I'm just extremely happy to be here. I started off as a scholar in this program and was able to transfer from Mount San Antonio College over to UCLA. And about 3 months ago, I just received my master's degree in educational counseling. Again, the first in my family to receive all those degrees. And I have a couple of siblings that are right behind me. So it doesn't stop with me, right? And then my daughter too. So just again, very happy for all of you to be here. It gives me much joy just to see that we have people from all over, and it gets me so happy. So like Claudia said, we have planned an amazing webinar, our last webinar of the summer. I hope you enjoy it. And like Alfred said, ask questions. don't be shy. This is your moment to ask questions, because I remember when I was at my community college, I had so many questions, and this is your space to ask those questions and get answers. So welcome. And without further ado, I would like to give it to my Nestor Hernandez, one of my peer advisors at LACC. Is he in the building? Perhaps not. So let's go ahead and give it to Sara.
Hello, everyone. My name is Sarah. I just graduated this past spring with a degree in global studies. I took part in CCCP in summer of 2018, ELAC Site Plus, and I transferred to UCLA in fall 2019. And I'm super excited to be here today. It was we worked on this so much, the whole committee, and we're so excited that you're all finally here. And I'll pass it on to Iridia.
Hi, everyone. So my name is Iridia Ibad. I transferred from LABC, so go Monarchs, but I also did attend LACC for a little bit, so go Cubs. I'm majoring in CHICANX and Central American Studies and minoring in education. Some fun facts. I was born in Guadalajara, Mexico, but I did grow up in a small town in Indiana. So I'm a first generation, non-traditional, documented student, and I'm so excited to have you all here. Welcome to your webinar. And up next, we have Daniel. I'm not sure if Daniel's in the building.
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes.
Okay, perfect. Hello, everyone. My name is Daniel. I'm the communications assistant for CCCP, and I help with the marketing of the webinar on social media. I'd like to again welcome you all for being here, and thank you for being here. I'm also a first generation transfer student. I transferred from East Los Angeles College and actually started off as a scholar as well in 2019. I'm the son of immigrants as well from Jalisco, Mexico. And I transferred this past year as a sociology major with minors in anthropology and education. So again, just want to welcome you all here. Hope you enjoy the webinar, and again, I want to stress that you guys have any questions anytime you have any, just so that you get the most out of this experience. Thank you.
Perla?
Awesome. Thank you so much to the planning committee. And I would like to go ahead and present the rest of our full-time staff team, who a lot of us are joining us today. I'm not sure if everyone's here. So if you're here, just go ahead and introduce yourself. Alberto Moreno. I don't think I've seen him. I don't think
He won't be here today, but he'll join us in the graduate school panel later on this afternoon. So you'll get a chance to meet Alberto.
Thank you. And Alfred, I know you already introduced yourself, but did you want to say anything else?
The only thing I wanted to say is if Mike's in the house, welcome, Mike, and thank you very much for joining us today. Mike is the president at Long Beach City College. So I don't know if you're here.
Awesome. Jewel, I don't think I saw Jewel. I don't think she's here today. Ariel?
Yeah, hi everybody. My name's Ariel. I'm the program coordinator for CCCP over at West LA and LA Southwest College. I'm really excited to be here. It's going to be a wonderful webinar. I'm also a proud transfer student myself. I transferred from PCC, so shout out to any Lancers also in the building. And I was an advisee or a mentee in the CCCP program, and I transferred to UCLA, and now I'm working back here as full-time staff. So again, welcome to your space. And yes, shout out to West and Southwest students that are here in the building. So welcome to your space, and congratulations again to the committee and for our final webinar. So thank you.
Awesome, thank you. Gaby?
Buen día, bienvenidos. Es un placer estar aquí con todos ustedes. Gracias por su participación. My name is Gabriela Abraham. I am a CCCP program representative. I am a proud Latina, first-generation, non-traditional parenting student who transferred from Los Angeles Valley College to UCLA and graduated in 2017. My daughter and I, we transfer, she transferred from Pierce College and I transferred from, as I mentioned, from Valley College, and we both graduated in the same year. And we were part of CCCP, we were scholars and also peer advisors. And I also wanted to add that I'm a first generation immigrant from Izúcar de Matamoros, Puebla. It's a tiny town from Puebla in Mexico. And I school after 20 years. I also was undocumented for more than 20 years. And, it's been a long journey, but, I'm being part I've been part of the CCCP family already since 2012. And I'm grateful right now that, we're working with transfer students and I'm working with them. And yes, enjoy the webinar. And as Alfred and everybody said, ask questions, connect with presenters, and thank you for being here again.
Awesome. Thank you, Gabby. And I know Blanca couldn't be here with us today, but she's also an amazing full-time staff member. And next up, Aurelia.
Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. I'm kind of doing a little bit of multitasking today, so I'm in my car. But my name is Aurelia Reimer. I'm the STEM program coordinator here at CCCP. I transferred from Santa Monica College as an anthropology BS major. I was also a scholar in CCCP, was a peer advisor to West LA and Santa Monica College, and for our STP program, which services our Black and African-American identifying students. So welcome, please pay attention, take notes, ask questions. We're here to really help you. I did not take everyone's name down, Claudia, so I'm gonna put my email address in the chat. So please, if you have any questions, please feel free to email me. And welcome. Nice to meet you all.
Thank you, Aurelia. And next up, my fellow Brojan, Frank.
Thank you, Perla. Good morning, everyone, and welcome to the webinar. My name is Frank Castorena Jr. I am a program coordinator here at the Center for Community College Partnerships, and I oversee the partnerships between Los Angeles Trade Tech College and Los Angeles Mission College. A little bit about me. I am a proud first-gen transfer, also son of immigrants. My parents are from Durango, Mexico, so land of the scorpions, So I did transfer from the best community college in Los Angeles, which is East Los Angeles College. So if you're a Huskies, please share that in the chat. I transferred to UCLA, yes, Durango, Mexico. And I double majored in sociology and Chicano studies while at UCLA. I worked as a peer advisor for the Center for Community College Partnership while I was there. After graduating UCLA, I did end up going to graduate school at the other school like Perla, and I got my master's in social work. So like my colleagues and Alfred said, please ask a lot of questions. If folks share their information, please take it down, network, hit them up. If you're shy to ask your questions here, please ask them later on, and welcome once again.
Great. Thank you so much, Frank. And up next, Santi.
Hey everyone, again, my name is Santiago Bernal. I am the assistant for the center, and I am an immigrant myself, son of two immigrants who had my mom had a first grade education, my dad had a third grade education, and came undocumented to the US in the 80s when the Civil War was really starting at one of the strongest points, and as many other Salvadorians during that time, during the 80s, many of us came to the US, and we came to the US not because we were, trying to travel and just, leisurely be in this nation, but we're here because of the intervention of the US in so many of our countries. I mean, that the imperialism has definitely impacted so all of our countries. I mean, from the conquest on, right? So, and so for me, it's always been important to be proud of who we are, be proud in the sense because everything is telling us not to be proud of it. So I'm happy that you're here. Bienvenidos otra vez. I'm happy that your families, communities, your biological families or geological families are supporting you in this process. And please allow us to walk with you in this journey so that we can, as a community, get there with you as well. Gracias.
Thank you, Santi. And last but certainly not least, I'm not sure if Charlie's in the building. I don't think she's here, but she's another amazing coordinator here with the program servicing ELAC. So my Huskies, if you're here, she's your coordinator. So again, thank you so much to the full-time staff for being here and for all your support.
Alex?
Qualitonali, Nanotoka, Alejandro Chipecua Juarez. Good day. My name is Alejandro Chipecua Juarez, and today I'll be delivering the land acknowledgement for CCP. The Center for Community College Partnerships at UCLA acknowledges the Tongva people as the traditional land caretakers of the Tongavar, Los Angeles Basin, and Channel Islands, and are grateful to have the opportunity to work with the indigenous peoples in this place. As a land grant institution, we pay our respects to the ancestors, the elders, and the relatives and relations, past, present, and emerging, right? So much love to our indigenous people of LA, the Tongva. However, many of you may be spread out through California or the United States or even the world, right? And it's very important for y'all to please acknowledge the land where you're at. And you could do that by going to nativeland.org. And I'll place the link right now in the chat once I'm done after. So you could definitely find out what land you're currently settling on, as well as how you could support the places, right? Support the indigenous people. There's links to the like different indigenous peoples where you might be able to find out how you could be an accomplice, right, in supporting indigenous people in this land. With this statement, I also want to acknowledge many of our people's, right, indigenous histories, indigenous lives that we're currently on across Mexico and Central America and Peru is one of the most ethnically diverse indigenous populations in the world, right? Where hundreds and even thousands, right, of indigenous people are across the countries that we're at, as well as, you know, how the United States is a settler colony. Many of our own countries, right? Many of our own countries being El Salvador and Mexico and Peru and all these different nations, right, also occupy indigenous land. And we must recognize that the indigenous people have the current struggle for land, water, ceremonial rights, and are the original protectors of this land. And we must do everything to protect this land, right, which my people call Tonantzin. So, you know, united with a united front as indigenous people, we must pursue and continue to fight for indigenous rights and support indigenous people. And much love, peace, power, prosperity, and solidarity to all the peoples across the diaspora. Thank you.
And we wanted to give you all a trigger warning for these next few slides where we will be addressing hate and violence that's been taking place. Santi?
Yeah.
You can read them. Thank you.
Excuse me. Okay, excuse me, I'm choking up. Okay, I'm reading the Black Lives Matter statement to our students and colleagues in the Black community and across the diaspora. We stand with you, your value and an important member of our campus and off-campus family. We all need to acknowledge the challenges and work to change them. We must work together as people of color and allies, people who are concerned about our future to eliminate these systematic disparities. We take a stand today and always because Black Lives Matter. And we also want to add that, you know, in our communities, in our countries, anti-Blackness is also a problem and a challenge. And we need to not hide from the problem. We need to identify it, and we need to ensure that we work towards ending it. Saying that because someone is a Salvadorian, they're not Black, or because, or saying morenitos, all of that is anti-Blackness, and we need to work to eradicate it. Thank you.
Hello, everyone. I'll be reading the statement on Stop API Hate. CCCP condemns hateful acts of violence, harassment, and rhetoric targeting Asian Americans, Pacific Islanders, and Desi Americans. Since the beginning of the COVID-19 pandemic, there has been an alarming increase in the discrimination and violence perpetrated on the APIDA community. These acts of violence are nothing new. We are disturbed by the xenophobic, racially motivated attacks. CCCP stands in solidarity with all of our students, colleagues, and community partners who experience marginalization and threat.
Good morning, everyone. I will be discussing the pandemic impact and how it's related to transfer students. So the death rate for Latino people is 21%, and for Black people is 9% higher than the statewide average. The case rate for communities with a median income that is lower than 40,000 is 37% higher than the statewide average. Community college students have the largest negative impact, particularly men of color who have experienced largest enrollment drops, and studies also show that transfer students show the highest need for basic needs. The UCLA has a return to campus initiative. So for the fall 2021, close to 80% of courses would be offered in person, as well as most labs. The UC will require anyone accessing UC facilities or in-person UC programs to be fully vaccinated prior to the fall term. And UCLA is planning for on-campus housing this fall and expects to offer housing to first-year transfers and to a higher percentage of second-year transfers. And the Los Angeles obviously mandates masks, which went into effect Saturday night, July 17th.
And I'll talk a little bit about critical race theory in education. This is a framework that we use in order to approach the challenges of the outcomes on how students are being supported through the community college through the transfer process. And it's a responsibility that is shared, not only the community college responsibility, but it's shared with universities as well. So the way we approach this is that we understand that the US has had a long history of racism and is still embedded in so many of our institutions, including education. As we can see in this chart, when students start at the community college, their dreams and aspirations are to transfer. 4 years later, and you can see that across the ethnic groups, racial groups, that dream and aspiration is pretty much the same. But when we look at 4 years later, who has been supported to transfer, we see that less than half of the, as compared to the other students, Black students, and then and Latinx students, 9% of those students are actually have been able to transfer after 4 years. And it is not because we lack something. It is not because we are unable to do things, or communities don't value education. That's what we often hear. But we challenge that dominant ideology. We challenge the idea that we lack something, and we actually approach it in a very different way, in saying, actually, the community colleges and for the Latinx communities have been a great entering space for education. More than half of CHICANX Latinx students enter the community college as their college entrance, and a third of the CHICANX Latinx recipients of a PhD enter college through a community college. So for us, for our communities, the community college is an important place for you to all start. And for that reason, we need to ensure that we're centering your experience whenever we're making decisions about how to do this work best. You will guide us in how to do it the best way. And we also are going to look not only at race and racism. We want to centralize that because people don't want to talk about it, but at the same time, we understand there are other identities in power dynamics that we need to also acknowledge as well. And then lastly is that, of course, it's a theory, and the academy, the university, we love theories, but we also have to put them into action. So today's webinar and your presence here, that's your action. That's your action to do something and change not only your future, but the future of our communities. So thank you.
Another framework that we use is community cultural wealth, a concept that was developed by Dr. Tara Yoso. It's composed of different elements. There's linguistic, aspirational, familial, social, navigational, resistance, and cultural. Dr. Tara Yoso developed this concept to acknowledge that communities of color possess a range of knowledge, skills, abilities, connections, lived experiences that are used on an everyday basis to survive and resist different forms of oppression. The purpose of community cultural wealth is to emphasize the different assets that we have. These abilities, these assets that are sometimes overlooked and suppressed by the dominant culture. For example, linguistics. Some of us have been translators since we were 7. Or for me, as an example, I grew up in a very predominantly white environment. So speaking 2 languages wasn't something that I was, unfortunately, sadly, yelling. In fact, I was very nervous to speak Spanish in public. So community cultural wealth reminds us that these assets, these abilities are something to be proud of. It reminds us that these assets help us resist different forms of oppression and also help us navigate higher education. And this is like a very brief overview of what community cultural wealth embodies. So we will be dropping the link in the chat. So please check it out and learn more about community cultural wealth.
So I'll be going over the community guidelines, or what we call Netiquette, which is respect the cyber community. Please keep your microphone muted and click on the speaker view when you want to speak. If you have questions throughout the presentation, feel free to utilize the chat feature. Questions will be answered during the Q&A portion that we have after our panels. Step in, step back when you have to or need to. One diva, one mic. Challenge ideas and not the messenger. And do not be afraid to ask questions. So for our agenda today, we are currently in session 1 that goes from 10:30 to 12:30. We already done the introductions, started doing them. From 11 to 11:45, we will have our keynote speaker, Dr. Mike Munoz. After that, we will have the current UCLA transfer student panel from 11:45 to 12:30. And then from 12:30 to 1:30, we will have a break, but we will also have other activities in between that break. So some can return back to session 2 that runs from 1:30 to 3:30. We'll begin with our community college resource panel, where we will learn about resources at some community colleges. And then from 2:15 to 3, we will have the UCLA grad school panel. And then 3 to 3:30, we will have our closing and our raffle.
Awesome. Thank you, Sarah. So good morning, everyone. I'm extremely excited that I get the pleasure of introducing our keynote speaker today. He has a special place in my heart, and he knows that. And it's with great honor to have him here today as our final keynote speaker for our final webinar this summer. I first met our keynote speaker at USC when he taught one of my first classes in my master's program. After that class, I took 2 more with him because he made such a big impact in my life with the way he taught, all while sharing his lived personal and professional experiences. And not only that, I looked up to him and still do, because he had done so much and had followed his dreams, all while being a single parent, just like me. Dr. Mike Munoz is the Long Beach Community College District's interim superintendent president. Dr. Munoz is a nationally recognized transformational leader in higher education. He's an expert in closing racial equity gaps for students of color, creating inclusive campus cultures for LGBTQIA+ students, and effectively leading for transformational change. A product of the California Community College system, Dr. Munoz attended East Los Angeles College and Fullerton College before transferring to the University of California, Irvine, where he received his bachelor's degree in psychology and social behavior. He received his master's degree in counseling and his doctor of education with a specialization in community college leadership from California State University, Long Beach. He is a first-generation college student. While attending college, he experienced both food and housing insecurities, all while caring for his daughter as a single father. Dr. Munoz has extensive experience teaching both at the undergraduate and graduate level in counseling and higher education. He has taught master's level courses at California State University, Long Beach and USC, and doctoral level courses at Cal State LA. He's currently serving as an adjunct professor of higher education at the USC Razier School of Education. Dr. Munoz was recognized as outstanding faculty member in 2019 from USC's Razier Student Organization and the 2018 Dr. Cynthia S. Johnson Award from Cal State Long Beach that recognized his contributions to higher education through exceptional student mentoring. On the national stage, his leadership experience includes serving on the board of directors for the National Community Colleges Hispanic Council as a founding board member of Colegas, the California Community Colleges LATINX Professional Association, and as a member of the California Community Colleges Chancellor's Office Fiscal Advisory Committee. Without further ado, here to speak on his own personal and professional pathway in higher education and how to advance a transfer-standing and transfer-receptive culture, I present Dr. Mike Munoz.
Perla, thank you so much. It feels really good to be here with all of you this morning. And Perla, you make my heart so full. As educators, nothing is more rewarding than seeing your students really fully self-actualize. And this is really just heartwarming for me. So thank you for the invitation, and thank you everyone who made today's event possible. Well, buenos dias. My name is Dr. Mike Munoz, and I have the great privilege of serving as the interim superintendent president at Long Beach City College. So, as I was reflecting on the invitation and both the opportunity to be here today to speak to all of you, I found myself really reflecting on my own journey and situating myself back on what it was like to be on that transfer path. And, I'm gonna be honest with you, it really kind of triggered a lot of emotions in me because I think we're living in a really challenging time right now. This pandemic has really taken a toll on the CHICANX and LATINX community in ways that, as we heard earlier, in terms of the impact and the disparate impact, right, that this pandemic has had on our community. And so I was really kind of just reflecting and thinking about today's message. And so I want to start off, if it's possible, would I be able to share my screen, Perla? I want to start with a slide if I can.
Yes, of course.
Okay, so I'm going to go into, and don't let the baby face fool you. I'm still going to struggle with technology, but I promise you I'll get there. I'll get this good. Give me 1 second. So I'm going to share the screen. Who can share? So it's not, okay, there we go. So give me a thumbs up if you see my screen. Can y'all see my screen? Okay, let me make this a presentation. So we're getting to here. Okay. So for me, people oftentimes ask me like, okay, so talk a little bit about what it means to be a president, or my previous role as a vice president. And how do you define your leadership style? I mean, these are kind of common questions that I've gotten in the past. And I always like to start with this slide because I think it's very important for all of us, whether you call yourself a leader or just anyone on our journey to and on our path to higher education, to really understand our why and really be rooted in our why. Because as I mentioned, we're living in unprecedented times, and there's always going to be challenges and barriers and obstacles on our path. And so for me, I think it's really started with me really understanding my why. Why am I doing what am I doing? What drives me? What keeps me on my path when life gets challenging? And so I'm going to start with my why. And then as I kind of reflect on my own college journey, I'm going to illuminate 3 themes to you all that I think really stood out for me as I reflected on my journey and that were critical decision points towards my path to success. So the first slide the first picture you see on the left-hand side is that of me, of the 19-year-old Mike with my infant daughter, or maybe not infant, but my baby. She was definitely, pretty small at that point. And that's on my grandma's front yard. I had a daughter very young, and I was, prior to that, I had left my parents' house when I was 17. So I was kind of on my own. My parents would talk to me, but there just wasn't a lot of support at the time. And so I felt really lost. And when my daughter's mother left, she dropped her off kind of one weekend and didn't come back. I found myself just really overwhelmed. I was scared, but I was still hopeful. And I think that's important to point out because, at the end of the day, we have to remain hopeful, even in the most challenging of circumstances. And so I always think back at that young person. And so when I think about my role now as president at Long Beach City College and the decisions I'm making, I always think about how will the decision I'm making in this moment impact that person, back in the late 90s, when I was struggling with food and housing insecurity. Because let's be real, oftentimes our colleges, in most instances, were not designed for us. They're not designed to support students who are struggling with housing insecurity, food insecurity, immigration status, all sorts of other issues that we know many of our students in our community face. They were not necessarily designed for those students. And so we have to really redesign them. We have to unlearn a lot and build new models, new systems, and new structures. And so for me, I think back on that young man. And so I'm going to start a little bit and really the hope that I had for myself and for my daughter. I knew that I wanted my daughter to have a different journey than I had. I knew that I wanted her to be able to have opportunities that I didn't necessarily have. And so that was my why. And so moving forward, I'm going to kind of share with you again the 3 themes from my own journey that I think, and it's interesting because I'm talking about it through the lens of these are the 3 themes that I've applied as a student that I think really helped me reach my educational goals. But I can tell you those 3 themes apply to my professional journey. They're really not that different in the sense that, my educational journey was really about how do I get through the fog and all the unknown of what it means to become a transfer student, what it means to earn a bachelor's degree, a master's degree, and then eventually a doctorate. But even as a young professional, when I entered the profession, I didn't have those role models either that I'm going to talk about in my educational journey initially. I didn't know a chancellor. I didn't know a president. I didn't know, a dean. And so oftentimes I had to figure that path out as well. And so I think these 3 themes that are going to emerge apply both to your educational and your own professional journey. But I'm really going to focus on my educational journey. So the first theme I want to share with you is what I call understanding what shapes our aspirations. And so there's 2 experiences I want to share with you that were really pivotal in helping shape my aspirations. So I'm going to date myself. There was this show back in the 90s called Beverly Hills 90210. And I used to pretend I was a real tough guy back in high school. I had, I was kind of pelon and I was pelon even when I had hair, but now I'm pelon because I've lost hair. So I guess, and I have hair envy now. I have to be honest with you. When I see people, I was like, I wish I would have had hair, grew my hair out when I could actually had hair. Now I don't have it. So I just have to deal with it. Right. But there was this show called Beverly Hills 90210, and I pretend I didn't watch it, but I did watch it. And I wanted to know if Brenda was going to end up with Dylan or he was going to pick Kelly. And it was this whole big old drama. It was a total novela. And so because I watched the show, they had started talking about the SATs in college. And I remember thinking, well, maybe I need to start thinking about college because Brenda and Kelly were talking about college. And so I remember through some peers, I found out, and this was before A through G requirements, it was called the A through F, that you needed a lab science to go to the university. And so I found out I needed biology. And at the time I wasn't, an honor student. I didn't have a 4.0, but I had a solid like 3.0 GPA. I was mostly a B student. So nothing, spectacular, but I wasn't also, a D or F student either. I was kind of in the middle range, a little higher, mid-range. And I remember I sat down with my counselor and I handed her my registration card and she looked at it and she said, you put biology down. Why do you want biology? That's a really hard class. And I was like, well, I want to go to, and at the time I wanted to go to Cal State Fullerton. And so I was like, I want to go to Cal State Fullerton. I lived in Anaheim. And so that was kind of the only university I really knew of. And so I said, I want to go to Cal State Fullerton. And she said, you really need to focus just on graduating high school. You don't need to worry about that. If you want to go to college, you can think of community college, but you don't need to worry about that. Let's just get you to graduate high school. And then so I pushed back on her a little bit. And I was like, no, I really want to do this. I think I can handle it. And she told me, people like you don't go to college. And I remember not really knowing what that, I knew what it meant internally, but in that moment, I didn't even know how to respond. I didn't know what that meant. And she said to me, she says, I have the perfect class for you. It's called ROP Animal Care. And so it's going to get you your requirements to graduate high school for science. And you're not going to have to worry about any more science courses because, this is about getting you to graduate high school. And so I did what she said. I didn't necessarily have the voice to kind of push back on that. And there I went into ROP Animal Science. And, it's not to take anything away from ROP or career technical education. I think they're very viable pathways for our students. But again, that was not my aspiration. That was not what I wanted for myself. And so I was placed in ROP Animal Care. And so if you're familiar with the model, you spend about 6 weeks in a classroom and then they place you out at a site. And so I got placed at an animal hospital. And I was thinking, okay, well, cool. I'm going to learn how to be a veterinarian assistant and whatnot. And I was placed in the back kennel. And so they had like a boarding facility for dogs. And so I was handed a metal rake and some gloves and some boots. And my job was to go in there and take the dogs out of the kennel, tie them up, and essentially clean up the feces and the urine, and with a metal rake, scrape it up, hose it down, bleach everything out. Maybe it wasn't bleach, but whatever, sanitize the area, and then put the pets back in. And that's how I earned my science credit to graduate high school. And so after that experience, I got really disillusioned with school. I basically felt like there was no point to it. And I started hanging out with some guys I probably shouldn't have been hanging out with and doing things I probably shouldn't have been doing. And so then, like many other Latino males or young men of color, I kind of went down this different path where education was no longer a priority and it was about kicking it with my friends and doing things, like I said, I probably were not the best for me at that time. And so that was that experience. So then fast forward a couple years later, I graduated high school, barely, with a pretty low GPA, but I still graduated. And I ended up becoming a dad. And so I needed to get this job. And I was like, I'm going to go I was able to find a job at Kaiser Permanente. One of my friends, my best friend, his mom and parents, they took me in after my parents made me leave. And I was living with them. And she happened to work at Kaiser. And she's like, I'll get you in. You can work at Kaiser. I'll get you in. So she helped me get in. And I got this job at Kaiser. I was doing really well. I was young. I was making double minimum wage. I had insurance. So I was thinking I was real chingon, right? Like, cause I was like, yeah, minimum wage was like $4.50 an hour. I was making like $9 an hour. So I thought I was doing real good. And so I was at Kaiser and I was helping. They were moving from to an electronic record system. And so I was getting pulled off the floor to help a lot because I was picking things up quick, the new system. And I was there one night with the administrator, and she, this woman has a master's degree. She's a nurse practitioner. She runs the unit. And she was like, Mike, what are you going to do with your life? And I was like, well, what do you mean? And she's like, what are you going to do? You're young. Are you going to go to college? And I was like, I'm going to work at Kaiser the rest of my life. Like, this is cool. Like, I get to wear these cute little scrubs that I didn't get to wear when I was a veterinarian assistant. Right. And I was in air conditioning and I had all these options. I thought I was real good. Right. And she was like, no, she's like, you need to go to college. And then guess what I told her? Before consciously I even knew what I was saying, I told her, people like me don't go to college. And then I said something that totally almost offended her. Her face changed and she looked at me really strangely. And she's like, well, what do you mean by that? And I was like, well, I'm a single dad, I'm Latino, it's not in my cards. And she was like, you know, college is exactly for people like you. She's like, colleges and universities want students like you. She's like, there's a community college up the street. She's like, we're open. It's a hospital, right? So it's open 24 hours a day. So she's like, we'll find a schedule that will work for you. She's like, you need to go. And so I went over to Fullerton College, I enrolled, and then something happened. I met a counselor that changed my life. His name is Rolando Sanabria. And it was the first time I saw a Latino male with a master's degree in this role in my educational experience. And I instantly gravitated to him. And I have to be straight up, like, I was probably a creepy little kid because I would stalk him. Like, I was just wanted to be around him. I wanted affirmation. I was seeking out validation at the time because wasn't getting it from my family. And so I would kind of like linger around his office, hoping he would make eye contact with me and ask me how my day was. And he was just so good in caring for me. He wasn't just about doing my academic plan, right? Like, he was like a support system for me. And so he transformed my life. And so, as I kind of tie up this first theme for you, which is, understanding what shapes our aspirations, I use these two experiences with you. Because first was this first experience I had with this counselor in high school that, told me college wasn't for people like me and put me on this path that I didn't really want for myself. And then I had this completely other experience with my administrator at Kaiser Permanente and my counselor at Fullerton College that really uplifted me. And so what I realized in reflecting on my journey is that you're going to have to make a choice, each and every one of you on this transfer journey, of what voices are you going to listen to? Are you going to listen to the voices that tell you what you can't do? Are you going to listen to the voices that might be negative and hold you back? Or are you going to listen to those voices that support you and uplift you and illuminate a path for you? And you have to make that conscious choice, because these voices, the positive ones and the negative ones, we're constantly being bombarded with them. And ultimately, those outer voices sometimes become our inner voice that we hear in our minds. And so you have to make a conscious decision, a deliberate decision as to which voice you're going to listen to. And so I always tell you, choose the positive voices. Choose the voices of those that uplift you, inspire you, encourage you, and support you. And do your best to not spend a lot of time focusing on those negative voices, because it makes a difference. I guarantee you it will make a difference for you on your journey. The second thing that emerged out of my reflections is the need to seek out supportive relationships and programs. When I think about my success, it all maps back down to people and programs. None of us do this on our own. None of us reach, the mountaintop by ourselves. And so it was my counselor, Rolando Sanabria, my transfer director, Steve Bautista, that transformed my life. I had been admitted, I participated in a program called the Summer Scholars Transfer Institute at UC Irvine. And I lived in the dorms for 10 days. And it was really difficult because I had to find someone to watch my daughter for the 10 days. And so luckily my daughter's biological mother's mother agreed to keep her for the 10 days for me while I did the summer program. And again, I was strongly encouraged by my counselors to do it. And I felt a lot of guilt. I'm like, I'm leaving my daughter for 10 days. And although I made arrangements and she came out to UCI and visited me a couple of times, I still had all this guilt about leaving her. I had people in my family would say, why are you focusing on your education? You're a father now. You need to be a man. You're a single father. You need to step up. This is all a distraction. And I saw something bigger. And I don't judge my family and those that told me those things, because in their mindset, they thought that that was sound advice. So I don't take these things personal. But I knew in my gut and in my spirit and that I wanted more for myself and my daughter, and education was this path. So it was a sacrifice, yes, but it was a sacrifice I needed to make in that moment. And so I went to UCI and I lived in the dorm for 10 days. And then something happened, before I was, and I get a little emotional when I talk about this, my grades were not that good prior to this. Doing the Summer Scholars Transfer Institute program, I was pretty much pulling C's because I was working and raising a daughter and I was busy. And so I was really stressed out. And when I was isolated for those 10 days and I didn't have the distractions of work and I didn't have the distractions of my family, if I didn't have the distractions of parenthood and all the complex relationships that I was dealing with at the time, my academic performance excelled. I got an A, and not only did I get an A in the class, I got the highest grade in the class, and I was selected to be the class speaker. And it really showed me something. I was like, wow, you know, I can do this. I can transfer to a university, and not just a university, because I'm not taking anything away from the Cal States, but I can transfer to a place like UC Irvine. You know, I am smart enough. I can do this. I can meet this rigor and demand. And so I came back with a fire in me. And, you know, I went back and I was like, I'm going to transfer to UC Irvine. I'm going to do this. And so I worked really hard. I got my GPA up because I didn't have the best GPA at the time. And I, you know, was very fortunate that I got accepted to UC Irvine. But I go back to those programs, EOPNS, my counselors, you know, they illuminated a path for me out of a really dark place. Because in that moment of my life, I was dealing with a lot. I was learning how to be a father. I had just come out. So, and I wasn't out to my family. So I was just basically had come out to myself at that time. So I was learning, you know, I was entering into relationship that was not healthy for me. And so I had to manage that where it was abusive. And I was trying to deal with that while trying to finish school, while trying to raise a daughter. And then, you know, again, how was I going to do all of this? And if it wasn't for my counselors and if it wasn't for those programs that gave me a pathway to the UC, that showed me there was family housing, that there was, because everything was like, I can't do this because of this. And like, well, there's family housing, or I can't do this because of that. Well, you know, there's a child development center on campus. Well, I can't do it because of, nope, there's this. And it's like, they kept matching all of the things that I was telling myself of why I couldn't do what I wanted to do. They matched it with an alternative outcome that was actually within reach. Didn't mean I didn't work for it. Didn't mean it wasn't a struggle. It didn't mean it wasn't easy, but it was within reach. And I needed to know that if I was going to put myself out there like this as a young, queer, you know, single father, I knew I needed to be able to know that if I was going to reach, that it was within reach, that I wasn't going to do this and then fail. And so they really provided that safety net for me. And so my second thing for you all is you need to actively lean in and seek out supportive relationships and programs. And don't feel shy. Don't feel embarrassed. Don't listen to any of those feelings that might get in the way. You know, and especially I talk about this with young men of color. You know, we oftentimes, you know, the literature tells us that, you know, young men of color oftentimes have a challenge with help-seeking behaviors. Like it's hard for them to ask for help or assistance. And so, you know, I try to break that down because at the end of the day, we need to seek out those supportive relationships. And we need to seek out that mentorship and guidance because it's through those supportive relationships and that mentorship, that guidance that essentially illuminates oftentimes that pathway for us. Because higher ed is filled with hidden rules. And if you don't have someone that helps you navigate that, it makes a challenging situation that much more challenging. So I always tell people it doesn't have to be this hard. You know, so lean into these relationships. And when you do, you know, remember, you know, you're 50% of this equation. You can't think a mentor is going to come and wave a magic wand and just, you know, fix your life for you. Like you have to do your work too. So like in anything, there's in any relationship, there's two parts. And so you show up and you do your part. And if you do, you'll watch your life transform because those relationships oftentimes are the folks, like I said, that illuminate that pathway and that they guide you oftentimes to the place where we need to be. So lean into them. The third thing that I want to share with you on my journey as I reflect, and I think this one really intersects with my professional journey, is this concept of what we call everyday leadership. You know, when I talk with folks about leadership, we often think about leadership in the terms of like, you know, something you have to aspire to, or you have to one day wait for, that you have to have a certain title to call yourself a leader. You have to be, you think of Cesar Chavez, Barack Obama, or Dolores Huerta, or any of these, icons that we think of when we think of leadership. And so we kind of almost create this hero narrative that you have to be, this person that has completely transformed the world before you can call yourself a leader. And I recognized very early in my journey this concept of everyday leadership, where I have the ability to impact in a positive way the people in my life and my community, no matter where I'm at and no matter what I do, no matter how old I am. And so regardless of whether I was that student at SSTI at UC Irvine that got selected to be that class speaker, I was a leader in that program. Whether it was when I first got hired at UC Irvine as the gear coordinator, I saw myself as a leader. I knew I wasn't the vice chancellor. I knew I wasn't the president of the college, but in my sphere of influence, I made sure that I used my energy in the direction of love and in the direction that uplifted my fellow people and my students, my colleagues, and my community. And so what I tell you is, you don't have to wait to have a college degree or to be a president to be able to make an impact in other people's lives and in your community. You can do that right now. And so lean in to this concept of everyday leadership. Don't feel like you have to wait to be able to do good. Because the reality is, we're living in a time and a moment where now more than ever, we need folks to see themselves as leaders. We need to create the change that we need to see in our community. We can't wait for other folks to come and do it for us. I'm gonna be very vulnerable and honest with all of you, and I'm gonna articulate something that I sometimes struggle with saying. I'm in this very privileged role. So I apologize. So first, let me preface this by saying, I'm gonna share something that I don't know if I have the full language to describe. So if it comes out wrong, I apologize, but I'm gonna do my best to say this. Sometimes I really look at my life and I feel like I'm living two different lives, or I live two different lives. I am living a life of tremendous privilege right now. I'm a college president. I live in a nice home. I travel. All my basic needs are met. It's really hard for me sometimes to reconcile where I'm at this stage in my life and where I've been, and not feel guilty. And so one of the things that I reflect on and think about in this moment is, yes, it feels good for people to say President Munoz. Everybody has an ego, and I'm not even going to pretend that that doesn't feel positive, right? But I'm not driven by title or status. I'm driven by impact. I'm driven by being so frustrated when I was young about how the system was it was literally rigged against me and all my friends, and saying like, I want to dismantle that. Like, I don't want, like, if I ever get to that seat, like, I'm going to do tremendously good things with that job. And, like the first thing I've done, some of the things that I've done since I've been in this role, like we just approved, we're forgiving all the student debt at Long Beach City College of anyone that had an outstanding balance since the start of the pandemic. So over the 3 semesters, we're forgiving it. We're lifting the holds. I'm really trying to put all this money as much in students' pockets as possible. And that's hard because the fiscal conservative people at the colleges, they oftentimes don't like these decisions because they want to see the money go to other places. But I'm trying my best to really use this opportunity to make impact in the lives of students, and especially our most vulnerable students. And because I recognize that I'm sitting in a position of privilege, both in this opportunity to serve as president, but also in all aspects of my life, that I have a responsibility to do good and do good with it, at least while the time I hold this seat. And so I share these concepts with you about understanding what shapes our aspirations and really focusing on those voices that uplift us and support us. This concept of seeking out supportive relationships and programs, because they oftentimes become our North Stars and our darkest moments. And lastly, embracing this idea of everyday leadership and not waiting to see the change you want to see in your community, but in this moment, in the sphere of influence you have, whatever that is, that you lean into it and you do good. And ultimately, once you reach, I guess this is my fourth theme now, because once you reach your goals and you're in a position of privilege, because once you're college educated, no one can take that from you. There's privilege that comes with being, having a bachelor's degree and a master's degree or a doctorate. That you recognize that privilege and you leverage that privilege in a way that advances our community. So with that said, I want to say thank you very much for the opportunity to be here. It means a lot to me. And especially because, I always say this, the degree that has always meant the most to me was my transfer degree. It wasn't the doctorate or the master's or the bachelor's, because I had so much momentum behind me at those points in life. It was that degree because it was the tipping point in my life. And I close with the slide on the right, and that's my daughter, Miranda. She just graduated. Well, this was a couple years ago when she graduated with her bachelor's, but she just graduated this past May with her master's in English literature from San Diego State University. And she just started last week her college professor journey. She's teaching at San Diego State as a lecturer in the English department, and in her and at Cuyamaca College in San Diego. And I think about her life and her journey and where she's been. She's still, her mom's still not involved in her life. And, she could have had a very different life if, I hadn't had the opportunities that I've had. And I recognize that. And I see her fully self-actualizing and living her dreams and, living her life at her best. As the young kids say, she's living her best life, right? I always go back to these two pictures because they keep me grounded. This is my why. This is why I do this work, is because I know education personally transforms lives. It breaks intergenerational cycles of poverty, but not just in terms of income, but also it's liberating. It liberates us. I felt so oppressed as a young person, a young queer Chicano, single father. Like I felt really, my education is what liberated me and ultimately allowed me to love myself, which then allows my light to shine bright and impact others. So I just want to end there and say, I'm proud. I don't know all of you, but I love all of you. And I'm so proud of you for being here today, for your commitment to this transfer journey. And just know that you have so many people cheering you on from the sidelines, and we're here for you. So thank you. I'll take any questions that folks may have.
Wow, Dr. Munoz, once again, you never seem to not motivate me. I feel like I can just take on the world right now. Thank you so much again for being here. I know everyone, enjoyed your speech. The comments are going crazy. They very much see you as a role model and just are proud of everything you've accomplished. So thank you again for taking the time on this Saturday, August morning, to be with us and sharing your powerful story, your narrative with the rest of us. Many of us didn't know we needed to hear it. And you came and you did you did it for us. So thank you so much. And at this moment, if there are any questions, please use the chat and I can go ahead and ask Dr. Munoz, or if anyone wants to unmute themselves and ask a question, this is the time to do it. Oh, Crystal, go ahead, Crystal.
Hi, my name is Crystal. I am PCC student. But I want to ask you a question, Dr. Mike. How's it feel you reaching out of people as a staff member in college and stuff like that? And I want to ask that question.
Thank you. That's a great question. How does it feel? I feel like I'm living my life's calling. I feel like this is what I was put on this earth to do. And so for me, there's a lot of gratitude, a lot of privilege that I know that that familias are trusting their children and their hopes and dreams in our hands. And so I take that very seriously. And I also feel like I know at the end of the day that I'm making the impact that I want to make. And so those are the three things I think that stand out for me. You know, have we solved all of our issues and problems? No. There's still a long way to go, but I see progress. You know, I think I'm an eternal, like, I'll be real, I'm an eternal optimist. Like, I'm all about energy and positivity and light. And so for me, I'm always going to follow those paths. And so, you know, yes, we got a long ways to go in higher ed, but I feel like we're moving in the right direction. And we stand on the shoulders of everyone who came before us. You know, you have an icon. Oh, I'm getting emotional with Alfred Herrera here with us today. I mean, I look at everything that he's done. I remember being 19, 20 years old and seeing him at transfer events. And I was, even though UCLA, I didn't go to UCLA, I was at Irvine, you know, the work was similar. And I think, you know, wow, you know, we have an obligation. So thank you. Good question.
You're welcome for asking my questions. So thank you.
Thank you so much. Any other questions? We'll take a couple more. If anyone has any more, you can just raise your hand or just put it on the chat and we'll go ahead and ask Dr. Munoz.
I have a question since he mentioned my name. Thanks, Mike. It is truly an honor to have you here. I am very proud of all that you've done. I do remember you when you were at Irvine. And it is really so exciting to see this new generation of, and I'm going to say it, young people, this new generation of young Latinos moving into positions like yours. I think over the course of the last year, we've seen 5 or 6 appointments for Latino presidents or interim presidents in the LA area alone. And so I'm inspired, and I know that your leadership, and I think you said it very clearly, it's passion. It's about the passion and how important that is. So it's not a question, it's really a comment and a statement, and to say that it is because of students like you, people like me do what we do. And I know you feel the same because of all the students in this room, you do what you do. And I need people to know that Long Beach, while it's a great place, has some challenges with some of their educational board, I'll say. So what Mike is doing is really great and important. The fact that he was able to wipe out the debt for the student, I'm sure was a long battle just to make it happen. So those are the kinds of the critical pieces of what's going on and showing true leadership and passion for the students. So I appreciate your being here, and thank you for the nice comments, but it's in your hands. And I think that you're showing the way of what our students need to do. So congratulations on your appointment. As I said earlier, we will be in touch to intensify our partnership with Long Beach and move forward. So thank you again for being here.
Thank you, Alfred. And we do have 3 more questions, if it's okay with you, Dr. Mike. We have Alejandro Juarez who has a question.
Yeah, how's it going, Dr. Munoz? First of all, thank you so much for being here. Thank you for your time and for sharing your story and your knowledge with us. You know, it's definitely inspirational to me. You know, I'm trying to head up in that path, like become someone in education and support students on a bigger scale, and I see you do that. And also, you know, from pelon to profesor, you know, you know, just because when you shared that part, I really resonated with me. You know, just being in a path, you know, you know, like in the streets, and then like just finally, you know, getting into education and doing that. So man, that really hit me, and I was just listening and just really taking that in. But my question to you is, what are ways that students could advocate for themselves, for fight for themselves, right? You know, CHICANX, LATINX students for representation in a campus, right? In a community college system. So that's like that's what students could do, right? That's your advice to all the students right here, right now. But also, what are the next steps or next phases for, you know, the community college system for Chicanos and Latino students to support them, to make sure they have the resources. What can they do? What are these like policies, or what are these things like Chicano Latino centers? Like, you know, what are things that you see that we can improve on to support Chicano Latino students?
Excellent question. So I think for me, there's a couple things, and I'll be honest with you, I've been really expanding the way I look at some of these strategies, because I think, you know, we often talk about what does it look like to decolonize, or what does it look like to be anti-racist. And so, you know, oftentimes we think the solutions are within the existing structures and systems. So I'm going to give you a two-part response. What does that look like within our existing structures? I think one of the things I recommend students to consider doing is to get engaged with the shared governance process, because every community college has one. There's a student equity committee that oftentimes requires student representation. There's, you know, usually some type of planning council for the college. That's their main shared governance group that has student representation. But it's not just in a tokenizing way. It's, you know, we have to train our students on how to navigate those spaces, so that it's not just like, oh, cute, we have the student in the room and they're there and they're like a rubber stamp. But no, how do we build the capacity of our student leaders, particularly our student leaders who represent marginalized communities, to be able to find their voice in those spaces and leverage their voice in a way that puts some pressure on the system to respond, you know? And I think that is something that I think from an organizing standpoint, we could really think about what that looks like, because I can tell you right now, my whole career has been leveraging student voices. You know, I didn't mention this, but I was at Rio Hondo for 12, 13 years, and I was over student government. And a lot of the equity work I did was because I invested in my students and built their capacity to speak on these issues. So I kind of would, you know, be behind the scenes a little bit, but then, you know, the students were the ones that would deliver the harder messages that put some pressure on the institution when the institution wasn't acting accordingly. And so I think that's, you know, looking at it within the structures, if we're looking at it through that lens, I think it's using the shared governance structures and using I'll just be real, using the rules of the oppressor to essentially work in our favor. And I think that's one option. Another strategy, if we think about it a little bit, kind of stepping out, is, you know, what kind of the very things that you're doing right here in this moment, you know, what kind of grassroots opportunities, programs, clubs, organizations, services can you create that can then teach students advocacy? Because I think that's a big piece. And remember, there's a difference between being an advocate and being like an agitator. Like, to me, agitators are people that just go in and they're just, they're just identifying, raising issues, but there's no real solutions. There's no strategy. I'm talking about advocacy, where like you can come in and you can, yes, let's identify the issue. Let's put a big light on it, but then also come with the intent, the desire to find solutions and ways that we can improve the situation. And I think that is another way that we can look at this as well. And then lastly, I think find yourself a good mentor. Like, if there's someone that is doing this work already in the way in which like for me, I modeled my career after Dr. Lara, who was, one of my biggest professional influencers, and I saw the work that he was doing at UCI, and I was like, I want to emulate that. And I sometimes tell myself I'm channeling my inner, Dr. Lara, or I'm channeling my inner, the different leaders that have influenced me. And so I think too, it's finding that mentor that can help you as well.
Thank you so much for
Thank you so much. Thank you. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Munoz. We are running out of time, so I'm going to go ahead and ask one more quick question, and then unfortunately, we're going to have to close the Q&A portion. But this last question is very interesting because it's something that even now with a master's degree, I still encounter this, and it's that imposter syndrome. And this question really touches on that. Do you still struggle with feeling like you do not belong in higher education in your professional role right now, in your professional space, as someone from a non-traditional and, Latinx background?
Yes, flat out, yes. But this is what I will tell you, I manage it. So it's for me, it's going back to, remember, like that first theme, like What voices are you going to listen to? So I talk about it is like the first thing is self-awareness. So when I enter a space and I feel like that ugly imposter syndrome starts to rear its head in my mind or in my, because it's not just your mind, sometimes it's your physical response, your breathing can tighten, your armpits can start sweating a little more. You know, whatever it is that's raising my consciousness, that I'm feeling it or thinking it, I catch myself. And I tell myself, don't listen to that. Don't feed into that. And so, you know, yes, I still feel it. I'll be honest with you, there was this huge port event last night. And it was like kind of my first big event as president, showing up to something. And I was being introduced to all these who's. And I was very uncomfortable for a minute. But then I caught myself and I was like, look, Mike, like, you can't, like, I hate to say it, and I don't want to sound like I'm a crazy person, but I self-talk, you know, I start self-talking myself. And I'm like, you belong here. You deserve to be here. Your presence and representation as a queer Chicano matters in this space. You know, so like, and then guess what? My feelings start to subside. So yes, it's there, but I manage it. And that's what I hope that is my message to all of you is it's not that it'll, you know, it's not a snap of the finger and it will go away. It will recur at different moments in time, depending upon what you might be feeling in that moment. But it's more important about what do you do with that feeling once you're aware of it? And are you going to continue to feed into it or are you going to try to manage it?
Awesome. Well, thank you again, Dr. Munoz. It made my heart so happy to, you know, for you to be in this space, and you filled so much people with so much energy and inspiration. So once again, thank you again for taking the time. I hope you enjoy the rest of your Saturday, and I hope to see you soon.
Off to the Long Beach, North Long Beach Jazz Festival. So that's why I'm dressed a little chill, because I'm going to be go dance some jazz music. Sheila E's performing tonight. So I'm really excited that I'm going to get to see Sheila E. You probably are too young for her, but Google her or YouTube her. Sheila E. Glamorous Life was the business back in the day. So I'll see you all later. Talk to you soon. Abrazos. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. All right, moving on. Thank you. This was great. So at this moment, I'm going to introduce Zuleika Bravo. We'll be taking over.
Hi, welcome everyone. Bienvenidos. So happy to be here and share space with you all. Super excited just to share these amazing stories from our transfer students. So we're going to be going into a student panel. First and foremost, just to introduce myself a little bit, my name is Zuleika Bravo. My pronouns are she, her, hers. I am the daughter of Mexican immigrants from the regions of Durango and Colima. I'm a parenting, non-traditional, first-generation, system-impacted Latina student. I transferred from Antelope Valley College in 2018, and I just recently graduated from UCLA with a double major in political science and Latin American studies. I will be entering my master's in education program this year, so happy to be here. And I want to introduce our amazing student panel. And for our student panelists, if you can please just introduce yourself with your name, your majors or your minor, what CC or four-year institution you transferred from, and I will pass it off to Lizeth Chimal.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for having me here. My name is Lizeth Chimal. My pronouns are she, her, hers. And I transferred from Mount San Antonio College, or Mount SAC, and my majors are communications and gender studies. And I'll pass it on over to Herman.
Thank you so much, Lizeth. Hi, everyone. It's so amazing to be here today. My name is Herman Luis Chavez. My pronouns are he, they, and él. I transferred from Colorado State University in Fort Collins, Colorado, and I'm a rising second-year transfer studying ethnomusicology and comparative literature, and I am the son of Bolivian immigrants. And I can pass it over to Nancy.
Hi, everyone. My name is Nancy, and I transferred from East LA College in 2018. I just graduated from UCLA with a CHICANX studies major and African American and education minor with college honors. I'll be starting my graduate program this coming Monday, and I'm happy to be here.
Is Nestor Hernandez, are you in the house?
Yes, I am. Hi, everyone. My name is Nestor Hernandez. I transferred from LACC, pronouns he, him, his, and yeah.
Awesome. Thank you so much. Welcome, everyone. So we're going to go into the questions. We do have a series of questions to ask all of you. And as many of you know, transitioning itself is really difficult. So, and I'll pass it off to the next person, but what are some challenges that you faced during your transition to UCLA? Nestor, can we start with you?
Yes. Well, I mean, to start off, I don't usually share this, but I'm an undocumented student. And with me, what happened was before transferring to UCLA, I had a lot of stuff to prove, right? So financially, I couldn't like pay for UCLA. So the only way I could have like financially afford UCLA was to go through California Dream Act, and I couldn't do AB 540 because I didn't do high school here. I'm from Colorado too. So what I did was do SB 68. So I was like going to school, I was doing adult school at night from 4 to almost 9 p.m. to get, I think it was like 400 or 100 and some, I think it was like 420 hours in order for you to be California Dream Act available. So once I did 420 hours of adult school, that meant I kind of did high school in California. So when I did adult school here in California, I was able to do, I was able to apply for the California Dream Act. So once I applied to the California Dream Act, like my door opened, right? So I was able to get financial help for LACC. I was able to get financial help for anything basically. So I had financial aid available. So yeah, I guess that's kind of like the start of my process with college. I think I was like the third student in LACC to get SB 68. I was so scared because I had no idea they were going to accept it or not. So sorry. But yeah, that's kind of like the start of everything. And I would like going to community college full time and also doing adult school is so hard. Like I can't, like going back to that and seeing everything that I had to do in order to be here is crazy. So yeah.
Thank you so much for sharing, Nestor. I want to pass it off to Sebastian. I'm so sorry, Sebastian, I didn't see in the chat, but if you can introduce yourself and then answer the question is, what are some challenges that you faced during your transition to UCLA?
Hi, everyone. Yeah, no, it's okay, no problem. My name is Sebastian Araujo. I'm also a fourth year. I'm a second year transfer student at UCLA, and I'm majoring in history and Chicano studies and minoring in labor studies. I transferred from Los Angeles Pierce College. And to answer your question, I think that one of the biggest issues or one of the most difficult things for me was imposter syndrome. I think that as soon as I confirmed that I was going to be attending UCLA, I was always scared as to whether or not I would be able to succeed in that environment, because I heard a lot about UCLA and I heard that it's like, it's rigorous. It could be a rigorous education, it is competitive, but that's definitely one of the main things. And also I wasn't even planning to go to UCLA because I didn't know if it was affordable. So I didn't know like even the financial options, but I think that one of the things that I'd like to bring up in every conversation when someone's applying to like a four-year university is like the blue and gold financial plan. Like that's really the thing that has allowed me to pursue a higher education at UCLA, because I wasn't going to go obviously UCLA is expensive, but I don't think that a lot of people know that if their family makes less than $80,000 a year, they have the opportunity to go tuition free to UCLA. So those were two of the issues that I would say were the most difficult when transferring.
Thank you so much, Sebastian, for sharing, and I will pass it off to Lisa.
Thank you. I think, well, being a second year transfer too, we started off like being on Zoom. So that was probably one of the most difficult things in my transition to UCLA, because everything was literally like completely different. Everything was online, right? So when it came to like finding a community and just like knowing who to contact, because there's literally so many resources here at UCLA that sometimes it's difficult. Like I joke with my friends that I'll find something and then like if I try to look for it again, I can't find it. So I have to like make sure that I pin whatever resource that I find. So I think that was probably the most challenging thing, and just kind of getting accustomed to the life of being at UCLA without actually being on campus. and like trying to figure out how it's going to be once I actually get on campus. Yeah.
Yeah, thank you for bringing that up. I think that the online transition was definitely difficult, and the added layer of our different identities, right, adds to that. So as a non-traditional student and as a parenting student, Nancy, what were the challenges that you faced during your transition to UCLA?
My challenges were a lot of the same, but they're different, of course. As a non-traditional student, I started community college back in 1998 after I graduated high school, but I didn't ever have a path, or I didn't know what I was doing. I wasn't disciplined. And then I even worked in Westwood at different jobs at movie theaters. So I had a lot of like years of like guilt that I wasn't good enough to be a student and that it was a mistake, the whole imposter syndrome that I felt the whole time. And then also being a parent, and then also being divorced right before that, and not having any housing security and not understanding like what was really going to happen. But so those are a lot of the barriers that I experienced like transitioning into UCLA. And then all the family that didn't support me, because as a non-traditional student, it's like, what are you doing? You're a mom, you should be working, be with your child. So it was just like so much guilt that I experienced when transitioning. Thanks, Julika.
Thank you so much for sharing, Nancy. And Arman, I'm interested because I know that you're a 4-year to 4-year transfer. What unique challenges did you face trying to transition to UCLA?
Yeah, thank you, Zuleika. So I definitely have a few that I can talk about. I think the first one is similar to what Lizeth was saying about transferring during the pandemic and it being virtual and everything, and the fact that I was in Colorado for a large chunk of that year as well. And so it was sort of like managing a lot of the differences of like time zones and, feeling the cultural differences of a lot of my transfer peers who were at least in like the LA area and could benefit perhaps from some of the material aspects nearby UCLA. And, I'm a 17-hour drive away from UCLA, for a lot of last year. And so that was something that was really difficult as well. And that was something that had a really interesting relationship with the housing insecurity that I faced in this last year. I moved a total of 7 times this past year at UCLA, across like several different like households. And that was something that was very difficult to experience and deal with because of the fact that there's like a lack of understanding between the way that these were working between LA and between Colorado, and between the experiences that I had in Colorado and in LA. And it was also a really big culture shock where I had to learn a lot of things about California really, really fast, and a lot of things about LA really, really fast that I had never learned before, and which I'm very glad that I know now. But it was a really big culture shock at the beginning, as well, and having to explain to everyone that like I couldn't tell you what Santa Monica Beach was, a year ago when I first started at UCLA. And that was something that was difficult. And then the last thing I think that was hard was like trying to fight with like administration to like see that the particular educational experiences that I had at my university to be something that like falls within the like academic policies that they recognize to be like coursework. So I had to fill out a petition for almost every single class that I transferred from my previous institution, which is Colorado State University. And that was a long process because I had to sort of like convince UCLA that these courses were even worth transferring, because there was no sort of like articulation thing set up for them to like know that those courses would transfer. So I had a lot of paperwork and a lot of like meeting with people and like trying to like convince them that the experiences that I had were valid. But I think that like ultimately now I feel that having gone through those experiences and gone through those challenges, I have like come to appreciate the resilience of the transfer community. And I think that's something that my peers here have shared as well, through like the difficulties of managing each of our experiences. And it's sort of what I think that, we really bring to the table and what we can take away from when like we think about those experiences as transfers.
Thank you so much, everybody, for sharing. You all hit really great points. Now, as our community, we appreciate family support, right? Family is really important to us. But I know, like, as a first generation Latina student myself, my parents had no idea what I was studying or like what the process was to get an education. So as CHICANX LATINX students, we understand that familial support is important in achieving our academic goals. But what role did your family have in your academic success? And I want to pass this off to Lizette, if we can start with you.
Well, yeah, of course. I was very lucky that like my family has always been really supportive of me pursuing an educational like path and just like a journey. But like you mentioned, Zuleika, like they, although they know like, oh, she's pursuing higher education, they don't really know like the gravity of like what I'm doing or like even my major. Like I know my mom was confused and she's like, why are you doing gender studies? Like, what are you gonna do with that? Or like even communications too. And it's just kind of like, I really have to, you know, being first gen and being like the only woman in my like family trying to like pursue higher education, it's really been kind of like tricky, but also I know that they like care and that they want me to continue to what's it called, to continue to go into higher education. But trying to explain, for example, like I want to go to grad school eventually, and trying to explain like the difference and like the levels of it, it's a little tricky. And I really do want, like, I really appreciate and want to like take into consideration like all of the, I wouldn't be here if it wasn't for my family basically, and like all of their support and love. But sometimes it's a little difficult, especially when like they sometimes don't understand like what it is exactly that I'm doing or trying to explain more in depth. But yeah, I definitely feel like family support is important, but sometimes it's important to also like acknowledge the work that you're doing and how you're like getting to the places that you need to be, because they're not always going to get it.
Yeah, you hit a lot of really great points on that one, Lizette. Nestor, how has your family supported you through this?
Yeah. Well, I want to say like family support is very important. When I moved to California, the only support I had was my parents' support. So like that's all I had to keep pushing forward. I knew that when I came to California, I didn't come for school. Like I really didn't want to do anything with education. And my parents were like, if you're moving to a whole nother state, you have to do education. Like we're not gonna support anything else. So I enrolled to LACC Community College. Yes. I enrolled to LACC and then they supported me throughout. And it's so crazy because like to see the amount of support that my parents gave me in community college, like that was the ticket to get into UCLA. Like that made me you know, all that support that I had for those 2 years in community college, like it kind of grounded me and kept me going to go somewhere else, to apply, to not be scared. I really wanted to go to Cal State LA. That was the school of my dreams. And my dad was like, why not UCLA? Like just go for it. You know what I mean? Like it's an application, just apply. And I was like, well, I don't know. Before that, I had read a lot about the communication in UCLA and how like rigorous and hard it was to get in. So I didn't really like want to do that. So I would say my parents' support was everything, you know, throughout my educational experience. They kind of shaped me and got me to where I am today. If it wasn't for my dad, I wouldn't have applied to UCLA. So that's crazy. And yeah, so yeah, like family support literally kept me going throughout my educational experience. And yeah.
Thank you, Nestor, for sharing. I want to pass it off to Nancy. What role did your family play?
No, mine was a little different because although like my family wasn't like morally supportive because they couldn't really understand what I was doing. I mean, they still helped me with my son and would take care of him and, you know, feed me. But really it's like CCCP became my family because here is like where I am being supported. Everyone's rooting for you. Everyone's helping you with time. my friends that I've made here, the parenting moms, and even my friends that are not parents, like everyone's become my family. And it's without everyone here, like I wouldn't have been able to even get here or even make it out. And then also like my son is my son is 10 and he's my biggest supporter. Like he listens to me, we talk about everything. I apologize when I'm not there, but I explain to him why I'm doing everything. And we talk about forgiveness and how I can be a better mom. But he's the one who's rooting for me. He's the only one in my whole family that was just like jumping up and down when I got into UCLA or even when I graduated. And it's not to say that, and not mad at my parents anymore or my immediate family or his dad. Like they just they just can't see certain things, and I completely understand that. It's my son in CCCP that really like helped me.
Thank you so much, Nancy. I think it's really important that you expanded what family means, right? It can also extend to friends, our children. I do want to open this question up to Sebastian and Herman, if you wanted to add anything before we move on to the next question.
Yeah, no, I think that family has definitely played a huge role. I would say more so my immediate family, like my parents, like even little things like my mom, like going to community college, like I would stay up late to study for exams and she would stay up with me like at 2 a.m. having dinner just so I wouldn't feel alone, and so she could see the support. And if anything, my parents are like believe in me more than I believe in myself. Like they're the ones that tell me to apply for this, to apply for that. And even just like though that belief has really helped me because they've inspired me to like apply to different things that I didn't think I would get selected for that I did, which is like I'm gonna go to a job that's like really fascinating and really interesting very soon. And they were the ones that told me to apply. And I mean, thankfully it worked out. So yeah, no, definitely family has played a big role.
Yeah, I definitely agree. My parents have been really like hands off in terms of like they never like pushed me because of the fact that they didn't really understand what was going on. And they said basically like, if you are proud of yourself, then we will be proud of you and we will like try our best to understand and support you there. But I think a term that I really like is found family. And because sometimes family can happen in like a really unexpected place where you don't think it'll happen and then like you find it there. And myself, like as a queer person and my family being both my parents being immigrants and them like not really understanding what it means for me to have a like specific queer community or like an intersectional queer community, and then having to like find those people and like have those people be a part of my family and have people to understand those identities and those intersections as well was really important, especially coming from my previous school, which was a PWI. It was a 90% white school. My parents didn't understand why like I didn't want to like finish my degree there, why I didn't want to continue to surround myself with that environment. And then like now at UCLA, I've been able to like find those people and like develop that home and then like feel supported in order to like keep pushing forward in the way that I like know is best. So yeah, I really appreciate those like points that were brought up. And I think that family is also like a process and it's something that I'm like looking forward to continuing to develop in the coming years.
Definitely relate to everyone, what everybody said. Thank you everybody for sharing. We're going to move on to the next question. And the next question is, can you share your involvement on campus and why did you decide to engage in activism organizing outside of your academics? And I know that many of you are involved. So I want to leave it open to whoever wants to answer this question.
I can share a little, yes. So when I first got to UCLA, I was very scared of like, I saw, so I'm when I came into UCLA, I saw UNICA, which is a Central American organization here on campus, and they were very politically active, like very politically active. And I've never been like that politically, like, I hate politics. That's just not my thing. But when I came to UCLA, I found UNICA and I found my family. Like they are literally like the people I trust and have in my heart for years. So when I got into UNICA, I got introduced to so many things that had to do with like Central America, the diaspora here in the United States, and how we could bridge that together in order to make better communities here in LA, back in Central America, and then back together here for like the undocumented people that are Central American. So I think like I got into activism like not knowing what the hell I was doing, and then when I progressively became part of Unica, that's when I like was like, I want to do this like for a longer time, and this is really like something that I'm gonna talk and advocate for. So I became the president of Unica, and ever since we've been doing, all we do is like politically inclined activism work that has to do with either like the diaspora here in Central America, but that support group on campus was definitely like what made me want to be an advocate and talk for those people that are usually not talked about here in UCLA. Because when you come, you're gonna see there's levels of like of where you are, where you come from, you know, like, and it's crazy to see that, but it exists here at UCLA. So you know, so that was definitely something that like made me want to pursue activism and stick with it. And I'm still, you know, I just got off my position from Unica, and I'm so excited to see what they're going to do in these upcoming years.
Thank you for sharing, Nestor. Does anybody else want to chime in on this topic?
I can go next and then pass it off to someone else. But yeah, I got involved pretty immediately with USAC, the Undergraduate Students Association Council, which is UCLA's undergraduate student government, working with the amazing Zuleika, who was our transfer student representative last year. And I think that one of the reasons why I got involved with student government in particular in the first place is acknowledging the fact that a lot of the issues that transfer students face at the university are institutionalized, right? Because this university was not built for transfer students. It was not built to do things like recognize the community college experience. It was not meant to allow students to have the full breadth of their academic career in 2 years. And there are lots of problems that exist that are infrastructural. And I think that tackling those issues at the infrastructural level in order to ease the experiences that transfer students have is really something that I was interested in doing right away, because of the fact that that community I knew was so strong from the beginning, and the fact that so often transfer students have to take care of one another in light of the fact that the university will not take care of the transfer student community. I like to say, like, you know, transfer students know what transfer students need. And you look at university administration, you don't see a lot of transfer students. And that's why I think USAC can be a really important space for, you know, advocating for transfer students to be placed into university decisions, and for there to be that representation in decision-making spaces, for transfer students to change policies that are not supportive of the transfer student community at UCLA. And for me, putting together the community work and the community development of connecting transfer students with one another and creating a home in student government, and then also putting that really closely with advocacy and like identifying those institutional needs and addressing them, is something that was really, really important for me. And as I'm serving as the transfer student representative this year, I really think that one of the things I've noticed is that transfers have such an amazing forward momentum, and that our advocacy is like built on this forward momentum of like, we are constantly like noticing the things that can be changed and can be supported, and the communities that need the most amount of help, and what we can do to support those students. And I just want to say before I finish that Zuleika was like absolutely like the person that like made me feel like I was able to be an advocate, and like developed my like skills and my confidence in being able to stand up to people who are in administration who sometimes don't always want to listen to the transfer student community. So I also just want to say that I think mentorship is really, really important for advocacy, and that your fellow students are your mentors as well, and that there are always so many people to learn from that are right next to you about the ways that like you can speak up for your community, and the people that need that support. And shameless plug, because I have no shame, we're currently recruiting for the TS office. So if you're interested in getting involved with student government with transfer students, please feel free to apply. I dropped that. And yeah, that's
Thank you, Herman, for sharing. Did anyone else want to chime in on this topic before we move on?
I'll chime in real quick. I just wanted, it's pretty similar to what Herman was saying, and like I love you, Zuleika, and you're probably one of the reasons that I continue to do like advocacy work. But with specifically in the TSR office, like we have like different branches, and one of them, the one that I'm in, is the lobbying one. So that's where I got involved, and also through like a mentorship with Alicia, because I had known her before through my CC. She was in like another CC, and we competed against each other in like speech and debate. But anyway, I just thought that it was so cool that we were able to like talk about transfer issues, not only to like admin level, but like through all levels in like the government and stuff. So like statewide, even we talked to members in Congress, and like a senator, we got to talk to Dianne Feinstein, which is really cool. And it's so important to have like our voices advocated for, but not only like not have like admin talking about like transfers and how they like love transfers, but not really doing anything about it. But when we make up 1/3 of the population, like I think it's so important to actually have our transfer voices being heard by actual transfers. So yeah, that's it.
Thank you so much for sharing, Lizette. I'm going to do just one really quick thing, is that there's a lot of student organizations and clubs at UCLA and across the UC. So if anything that you're interested in, right, and it all ties back to your identity as well, you can definitely seek those out and find community. I do want to move on to our last question, because I think this one is very important. Academia can be a very overwhelming space for BIPOC individuals, right? In your perspective, how have you managed to balance such work along with your extracurricular activities? And I want to pass it off to someone who hasn't spoke yet. So Sebastian.
Yeah, so the way that I definitely balance like extracurricular activities in school is really self-care. I think that that's really important. I do like to pack my schedules with like a lot of units. And it can get a little stressful, but definitely like family and friends have been like a great support, like especially as a first-gen student, like I've been able to meet other fellow first-gen students that are also going through like the same stress and who are also trying to navigate academia. And so, you know, we kind of just connect and, you know, try to talk about our feelings and, you know, just try to distract ourselves a little bit. And like, I also just wanted to say before we conclude this panel that I'm going to attach my Instagram and my email in the chat. If you guys have any questions or you guys need like any help with your applications or anything like that, like, please feel free to message me. Like, I won't be weirded out or anything. So yeah, or if you want to read like my UC essays, I'll also post that. Yeah, I just think it's important to connect, but thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Thank you, Sebastian. And Nancy, how are you able to navigate and balance, you know, the work along with being a parenting student and all your other identities?
Oh, I think the first 2 years, I was a third year transfer. I was there for 3 years, but I think the first 2 years I didn't know how to balance. I mean, there is no balance, I think, especially as a parenting student. But I mean, the first 2 years I worked at my old job as a receptionist and I worked on campus. It was very overwhelming maintaining my GPA. I didn't have any self-care. Like, I know it was, that word was everywhere, but I didn't feel like I could. It's not until really this last year that I really had to sit down and say like, okay, I have to do more for myself. I have to do more for my son. So mostly like this whole last year, my self-care has been watching, you know, the shows and really just watching a lot of shows with my son and sitting down and watching like his favorite shows become my favorite shows. And our binges have become like my self-care, where it's just like fun and we relate and I truly enjoy it. But it's like we also have like our time together. So that's what my self-care has been like this last year.
Thank you so much, Nancy, for sharing. We are at the end of this panel, but I want to open it up for questions from our guests. So if you have any questions, please feel free to raise your hand or put it down in the chat and we'll open it up to the panelists to answer. Okay, so Crystal, go for it.
I want to ask you a question. I am a mixed race, means like I'm half German, half Hispanic, and half Mexican descent. And I want to ask you, like, I am a disability spectrum disorder student in PCC, but I want to looking at more about UCLA transfer program for disabilities. Do you have that in UCLA? Just asking.
Does anybody want to take this question?
I can start, and then if anyone wants to add anything, they can. But yeah, thank you so much for this question, Crystal. I really appreciate it. Yeah, I think definitely understanding that, like first and foremost, that like the Latinx community is not a monolith, and like there's no one identity or like definition of identity that exists for the community is true. Like even on this panel, like we have students that identify as like Chicano, a Central American, a South American. There's like different like generations, different like mix and like races and all that. And I think that's something that UCLA does recognize. It can always get better, and I think we're always working on that. But I think that's just something that I wanted to open with, that I think everyone here is definitely conscious of, and that I think the transfer community is definitely conscious of. And then particularly when it comes to disability and supporting students with disability, I think it's actually really interesting that a lot of transfer students actually do have disabilities. A good chunk of transfers are registered with the Center for Accessible Education, the CAE, which is what offers accommodations for students. And we know, however, that not all students who have disabilities register with the CAE. So there are probably more students with disabilities that are actually transfers that register with the CAE. So there is a particular Center for Accessible Education that can help you with any accommodations that you may need coming into UCLA. And UCLA will not like particularly discriminate on the basis of disability in the application process. So like once you get to the university, you'll have definitely that ability for the institution to like do whatever they need to do to ensure that you can be successful in your classes, regardless of what your status of disability is.
Thank you so much. I give my emails to you. Give me more of like more about disability programs in UCLA.
Thank you for that question, Crystal. If you feel comfortable, feel free to put your email down in the chat and we'll get in contact with you. We do have a couple more questions, and I want to combine these questions so just so we have enough time, because we are going to come up to a break. I want to open this up to the panel again. How do you make meaningful connections with professors, specifically in an online environment? And then we did go over a little bit of imposter syndrome, but I think it's important that we address it. So also, in addition to making those connections to professors, how have you guys dealt with imposter syndrome being a transfer student at a school that is huge like UCLA?
I could go ahead and answer the question. So the first one, I think that it's really important just to like attend office hours and have them see your face, like turn on the camera and talk to them, and even just participate in class like lecture. I know sometimes it's a little scary, especially because like you're not seeing everybody. But that's certainly what helped me like throughout this year of going to my professor's office hours, and then I was able to actually like get them to write me some letters of recommendation, things like that. And then to answer the imposter syndrome question, I think like sometimes I just have to remember like, well, I'm here, aren't I? Like, why, like I wouldn't be here if I didn't like belong here. And it's really like difficult to like internally process that, but I just have to constantly remind myself like I wouldn't be here if I didn't belong here. And like every student that's here, like when I'm like thinking of my classmates and stuff, I'm like, oh my gosh, they're so smart. Like, yeah, they are so smart, but so are you. And that's something that I constantly like tell myself. Yeah.
Thank you for sharing, Lizette. Did anybody else want to chime in on this one?
I can add for like letters of recommendation and all of that. Like I did connect with the 2 letters that I got were from professors from that I did start these classes on Zoom, online. So it was hard to start thinking about it, especially since I'm starting grad school and I had to ask But what really helped was like talking to the TAs. One of my TAs really did, I talked to her about it, about how I felt scared and, nervous about asking. And she helped me, get a letter of recommendation from the professor. And they both supported me with it, She put it out there for me. She spoke to him. And then I had to, also do my part and reach out to him on top of that. Secretly, I was just hoping, she would just get it done and I wouldn't have to do anything else. But it wasn't like that. She was just like, you need to also reach out. And it was also, ignoring all the insecurities of like asking a professor, hey, can you support me? And then another professor too, I was showing up to office hours. I always do my best in the class to have my camera on, because I do think it's important for them to see us and to know that we care enough to like turn our camera on and ask questions, even if they're like questions you don't know about. But I started forming a relationship with a professor where I was just showing up to office hours asking questions. And at the end, I was just like, will you support me with one? And she said yes. And I started an email thread. Hey, thank you for considering it. And then just started from there and just kept on emailing, when I needed it. So those are things that really helped me. And I would just suggest for everyone to start doing it now, to just say, hey, would you support me with a strong letter of recommendation when I need it, even if it's like a year away? Because that's what I did for one of the classes. It was like a whole year before I got it. So that really helped.
Thank you, Nancy, for sharing. So first of all, thank you everybody and all the panelists for taking the time out of your day to come here and share your stories and your narratives. We have such an amazing panel of experienced and amazing and intellectual individuals here. So thank you again. And I'm ending the panel, so thank you. And I will pass it off to Claudia to take us to a break.
Thank you all. And again, thank you to all the panelists for being here, for sharing your stories, for being so insightful with your responses. And with that, we're going to go ahead and go into our break. So we will start back at 1:30. And in our second half, we do have another student panel, actually a graduate student panel. So transfer students that are now on to graduate school. So we will have you, hope to have you back at the second half. And in addition, we're starting off with the community college resource panel. So these are all CHICANX, LATINX professionals that are working at the community colleges, and most of those who have gone through our programs have served as peer advisors while at UCLA. So this is so exciting to bring back our alumni from CCCP who are now working at the community college. So we invite you all to come back. And so with that, I will let you all take a break, grab some lunch, and we will see you all at 1:30. At the end of our second session, we will certainly have our raffle, so please come back. And I'm going to ask Perla if she can start playing some music, so we'll have the music going in the background for the next, 45 minutes or so. And we'll give you all a reminder when it's almost 1:30, okay? So very excited to have you all here. Thank you, and we'll see you at 1:30.
DJ Perla at your service. Here we go.